Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei. I'm so excited to paint with you today for another watercolor journal ideas page. We are going to be painting this lovely little bird illustration. So cute, and I'm loving the color palette. So throughout the video, we're going to do a little drawing first to put our bird shape down, and then I do make a few mistakes along the way, so make sure to watch the video before you get started to avoid the mistakes that I make, in particular with the eye. And then lastly, I'd love to hear what you think about the color palette of these leaves. We start in one direction and then I make some additions later on, and I'm wondering which one you prefer better. So thank you so much for joining me. Let's get started. We have our core paints by Golden. I have my Bauhaus sketchbook. I'm using a Princeton Aqua Elite size 8 round brush. So let's get painting. Okay, so this little illustration is so simple if you just think about it in simple shapes. So we're going to draw our little bird right in the center here. And we're not going to worry about the beak. We're just going to draw the body. And the body is just like a bean shape. Okay, so it looks like a lima bean, a jelly bean, but it's just a bean shape. It's got a little bit of a rounded part at the back, and then a rounded part at the top for the head. You can make that a little more round if you want. And then a big kind of belly area down here. And now we're going to put on kind of the other details that make it look more like a bird. Okay, so we're going to put on a wing right here, about right in the middle. We're going to draw a wing on. The top of the wing is going to follow the body, but the bottom of the wing is going to scoop off and kind of come off the back there. Okay, and you can play with the shape of it. You can make it a little more curved at the bottom, longer, like make it come out longer. All right, and now we're going to put on the tail. So let's put on just a cute little, and you could do 2 or 3 little tail feathers out there, but you don't have to get too complicated. So if I wanted to do a third, I could come out this way like that. There we go. So 3 little tail feathers, and then the beak is going to be really important. Let me just lighten these lines up here a bit and kind of go with, I sketched in a few versions. Let's go with the one at the very top. All right, now where you put the beak is going to help figure out which way your bird is looking. So if you put the beak way down here, your bird is going to be looking down. But if you put it up here, your bird is going to be looking up. Okay, so you can play with the position of the beak. And it's going to be like a somewhat of a diamond shape. So it's going to be pointed on this side. So a triangle on this side, but then it's also going to be a longer triangle on this side. There we go. And then we're going to do a big wide eye like this. We're going to have to do some layering on this with some bleed proof white. So some of this is going to get covered up, but basically a wide eye with another wide circle inside. So this is very cartoony, illustrative, anime almost looking. And then we'll do an even whiter dot right in the front there. Looks a little crazy, like super wide-eyed right now, but once you get the darker color in there with the white, it will kind of bring it down. And then last but not least, we're going to put in some feet. So just have them kind of come out like this. And we can put, let's put a little branch under him or her. And then we're going to be putting all of our leaves kind of coming off of that. If you want to draw in a few branches just to kind of give yourself some framing in the direction that you're going to go, you're going to have to go kind of behind the tail on this side, and then we have all this space over here. All right, so that is the outline of our illustration for our cute little bird. And now we're going to add some paint and get started. All right, so I'm just going to lighten up some of these lines just a little bit with my kneaded eraser. Highly recommend getting a kneaded eraser if you don't have one already, especially if you're working on watercolor paper. And if you tend to draw heavy, this will save you a lot in the long run without damaging your paper. All right. I am going to be using, for the main part of my bird, I have some indigo in here. And this is Core, Q-O-R by Golden. And this is just a fun color. So I'm going to start under here. And now you could do any kinds of combinations of different colors. But I'm going to start under the breast. I'm going to work around the eye. Actually, you don't have to work around the eye because we are going to put bleed-proof white. And I am going to blend it out. Let's go right over the eye. The bleed-proof white will certainly help. And I'm going to throw in some additional color right around the belly. But let's blend this all the way out to the top. And indigo is great, but it does go on really dark, but it dries much lighter. So don't be afraid to be generous. And don't worry about the wing. We're going to put on the details of the wing later on after this dries. So you can see here it's already lightening a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit more here, a little under where the wing is going to be, and just kind of like around the eye there. Now, when you get all these little kind of spider webby things, sometimes you love them and you want to keep them, but if you don't want to keep them, especially with core paints, every brand of paint is slightly different. Core paints move a lot, so their binder in them helps them move quite a bit. But you can just take a brush that's damp. It has no water on it, in that no water is going to come out of the brush onto the paper. It's just going to move around what you have on there. So I'm just using my damp brush to kind of blend those out, make them a little bit more smoother in their transition. There we go. And I'm not going to be afraid to add even a little bit more. You can always come back and do another layer later. Especially if you're not quite sure if it looks dark enough for you. I just know these colors, these dark colors, they go on super beautiful and juicy when they're wet. And as they dry, especially the blacks, grays, and blues, they lighten up quite a bit as they dry. Okay, so we're going to leave that, let that dry. Let's put in some tail feathers. And I'm actually going to put in some green, I think, for the tail feathers. So I'm going to pull out some sap green. I'm going to add a little phthalo blue to it to get like a really pretty kind of turquoisey green. And just thought it would be fun. No bird out there has a green tail feather. But when you're doing an illustration, you can make it up and you can do whatever you want. All right, so that's layer one. They all kind of mix together and overlap, but I'm going to add on more layers later on to give that a little bit more interest. I'm going to just dab in a little extra color on the ends here. All right, so let's let all of that dry now, and we'll come back and add on some more details for the wing, the beak, and we'll put our first layer of our eye on. And we could probably do the legs as well. All right, we're all nice and dry now, so we can work a little bit more on the wing. So the wing is right here, and we're just going to kind of outline it. The underside of the wing is going to be a little darker. And I'm just going to add in some of these little stripies here. just to give the impression of some overlapping feathers. I'm using the very tip of my brush to get in there and create that texture. All right, so there we go. We have the wing in place. I'm gonna take some of the same indigo. So you could do, if you don't have indigo, pick any other color you want. And I'm going to outline undersides of these feathers to create some separation. There we go. And let's do our legs. So you could do your legs in all kinds of different colors, blacks and browns. I'm just going to pick up a raw umber. And if you need to use a smaller brush or a liner brush for this, go ahead and do that. I'm going to use just the very tip of this and be really careful to make nice little thin lines for legs. And you can see my brush even skipped a little bit here. You can just leave that, or you can go back and try to. There we go. So we have our little legs in there. Let's do our beak. I'm going to use some Payne's Gray for that. So right up here, some Payne's Gray. So I'm doing a black beak. I'm going to try not to put my hand in any of the wet color down here. And this is definitely important that the bird is dry, because otherwise you're going to get black kind of bleeding all into your bird. And I'm just going to kind of fill that in just like that. Perfect. All right. Now we're almost done with our bird. We have a couple more layers on the eye to do. This has to be done in 3 layers. So I'm going to put 1 layer down now. Then we're going to work on our leaves. I'll come back and put the second layer on, and then we'll probably dry it and put the 3rd layer on. So it's 3 parts. And like I said, if you drew it out and you're using bleed proof white or any other, if you're using acrylic or gouache or anything like that, it's going to cover up your pencil line. So you're going to have to just be able to kind of figure it out as you go. The first layer is going to be filling the whole thing in with just white. I mean, I guess you could, instead of layering them and stacking them, you could just fill in the white part, just fill in the black part with black or Payne's Gray, and then add the little white dollop on top. But I like to actually stack them. So I'm going to let that dry. I know it looks super creepy. Little zombie bird right now. But while that is drying, so again, I used Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. I get a lot of questions about what is Bleed Proof White. This is Bleed Proof White, my favorite brand. It's a water-soluble paint that dries matte, unlike acrylic paints, which have a glossy sheen because they're plastics. It's a little more opaque than gouache. It's certainly much more opaque than white watercolor, but it still is water soluble. So it's something between an acrylic and a white watercolor or white gouache. It's its own thing in its own category. All right, so let's paint some really fun, beautiful leaves. So we're going to stick with blues and greens, but they're going to be a little more yellow in there, and I'm going to add in a pinky orange color as well. So for my pinky orange color, I kind of made some up over here already, but let's clean that up. I think there's some white in there from something else I was playing with. And here, I'll clean this one up too. So I have a green gold color, which is a very beautiful yellowish green. If you don't have a green gold and you have sap green and you want to add yellow to it, try to make something as close as you can do that. But here's this kind of really bright green gold. Definitely has a nice quality to it. I'm going to pull out some more sap green over here. There was a little phthalo in there. This doesn't have to be exact identical mixes for sure. And then for my pinky orange, I'm going to use magenta and some diarylide yellow. Or a gamboge yellow would be good, but it gives us this nice kind of pinky orange color. Now I didn't, for this one, I didn't put out, for a lot of the things I've been putting my colors out on the page. I'm not going to do it for this one because I'm going to use the whole page for the design. So, but in the future, I will try to continue to do that. I know folks like it. All right, so we're going to start with some of our branches. So again, I'm going to use that burnt umber color. I'm sorry, raw umber. Ugh, I always mess them up and say them wrong. And again, I'm using the tip of my brush. I'm just going to make a few branches. I'm not going to make every single one. But just to give a shape. And you can see I'm using the very tip, and it skips sometimes, and that is fine. Or it gets really thin in places and thicker in other places. That is perfect for a branch. Maybe not that much skipping. There we go. Okay, so we have some nice framed branches around this feeler. And also go right across this branch on the bottom that we're sitting on top of here. So let's get in some leaves. These are going to be some basic 2 or 3 stroke little kind of chubby fat leaves. They are all going to be flat and facing forward. They're very design elements, very illustrative. Right, so green gold. I'm going to put in some of these. These are my lightest color leaves. There, hopefully you can see that. And that was 1, 2, 3 to kind of get the full shape that I want. I'm going to move these colors around. They don't all have to be touching a branch. I can connect them later. And try not to get too carried away with one color, because before you know it, like the whole thing's filled in with one color and you haven't touched your other colors yet. You can always go back and add more green gold. All right, so let's move to, I am going to do a blue, an indigo color leaf, but actually it's going to be more of a green blue gray. So I took some indigo over here and I'm going to add some sap green to it and a tiny bit of magenta, a little more blue. And this will be probably my darkest color. Don't be afraid to overlap a few things. These I want to make sure they all kind of go behind. And you can already see this provides a really nice contrast. These really light leaves with these really dark leaves. Our green will kind of be in the middle somewhere. I'm trying to work on adding more water to my leaves so they have a more translucent quality to them with some interesting kind of water shapes in them, darker on one edge. All right, let's get some other colors in there. I'm going to do kind of pure sap green. And this green is kind of somewhere between this bluish green. It's a much warmer green. It's got some yellow tones to it to really tie this green gold together. So all of these colors kind of complement the indigo. Just gonna put a few out here that aren't attached to anything. I'll attach them later. But I just want them to be in the spaces that I want them. Okay, and then I really love this color pattern here. I don't know if I want to mess it up with this red color. What do you guys think? I mean, I could always do it again, but it really looks just so lovely. Okay, we're going to be brave and take chances. And just remember that we can always do it again. All right. So this is going to be the only super like warm. This is totally warm. I mean, the green gold, that yellow is kind of in between the cool colors and the warm colors, but this is a true warm color. So it's going to kind of steal the show a little bit. All right. We're going to go for it. It definitely adds complement and contrast because red, add a little more pink to it. Red and greens are opposites. They're complementary, so they look super kind of, you know, bright next to each other, jarring. I like this color palette with these 4 colors in it, but I really love the 3 colors, the all kind of cool color palette as well. Let me know what you think in the comments, which one you preferred before I added this red color or after. Or if you would have gone with a whole different color palette altogether. All right, and I think I'm going to be done with the leaves and adding in some more branches. I would recommend for branches, if you really struggle with your brush and getting up on the tip of the brush and having a steady hand, to get a liner brush. This is a liner brush. You can see it has really long bristles on it. It's really hard to make a thick line with a liner brush, so it can be really helpful if you need to make thin lines and you struggle a little bit with that control. See how easy that was? Attach this one here and this one down here. Just kind of attaching everything to something else. There we go. It's super windy at my house right now. I'm like afraid a tree is gonna fall any minute. Because it rained like super hard yesterday. Everything is very soggy. Now the wind is blowing really hard. So I'm afraid some trees are just going to be blown right out of their roots. Okay, I'm going to stop playing with it. All right, so there are beautiful illustrative leaves. And now let's finish up our little birdie's eye. I'm going to give this a little dry with the heat tool just to make sure it's super dry. Oops. Just to make sure it's super dry, and then we'll add on the other details. once it's super dry, you can come in. I'm going to switch back to my size 8 brush. I'm going to get out some nice dark Payne's gray on my brush. And so this part of the eye, oh, it was not super dry. Hold on. Let's hope for the best. Now it's super dry. Y'all, I've made a grave mistake. I made such a big deal about the bleed proof white and stacking them. And now I'm regretting it. There we go. It was reactivating the bleed proof white because I put it on so thick. Okay, so what we have learned here in our sketchbook, last time we did this, I stacked them and it was totally fine. But in this case, the bleed proof white was really thick that I put on there. So even though it was very dry, as I was painting on it with wet material, it was reactivating it. So I put a lot of black on there to form a thick layer. But what you could do is put your black circle in and then just put a rim of white around it if you want to avoid that altogether. So we live, we learn, we make mistakes. Sometimes materials act one way one time and then they do something different another time. Okay, so let me dry this now. I'm going to put another kind of layer of white around the edge, and then we're going to put our little highlight in the pupil. All right, so that's all dry now. Worked out in the long run, but had to put at least, 2 coats, had to be super careful. Now I'm going to take some bleed proof white on my brush and I'm just going to go, this is what you could have done in the first place, just make a black kind of circle and then go over top of it with bleed proof white. So kind of the opposite. Go around the edge here. So I'm just thickening up that edge a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little dot right there to give it a little highlight. Beautiful. All right. So there is our little bird illustration. Super fun. Lots of color. I would love to know what you think about the color palette for the leaves and which one you preferred. But thank you so much for joining me once again. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Check out the description for links to supplies and materials that I have used in this video as well as that I use all the time. And follow me on social media, and I will see you for another watercolor journal page very soon. Take care, y'all. Happy painting.